One dark fall evening about 8 years ago, I learned firsthand of the power of prayer. We lived in Michigan still, and our son Jason was in a band, and he loved to sing, and he was their lead singer, and they'd get together, and they'd write their songs, and they'd practice for their next gig, and he always came back from those sessions just pumped and full of life and ready to sing his heart out for his fans. Well, one frosty night, he and his friends wrapped up their practice and stowed all their gear on the trunk of the car, and all four of them hopped in the car and headed for home for some much needed sleep. It was late, and the dirt road was dark, and when the road took an unexpectedly sharp turn, the driver overcompensated and rolled that whole car into a ditch. 3 of them went home with minor scrapes and bruises, but my son suffered severe internal injuries, and he was rushed to the hospital. So at 2 a.m., we got that call as every parent's nightmare said, "Mom, Jason's been in an accident. Get here now." Well, when we got there, we spent long hours in the waiting room, anxiously waiting to hear the results of CAT scans and unsure of his condition. And the sun rose, and life seemed so normal when we looked out the window. But there inside that hospital room, our life had come to a dead halt. There was nothing but the waiting for the tests to show what was happening, finding out what they could do there, learning that they were not able to meet his needs there at that hospital. So they bundled him up for an ambulance trip to a hospital an hour away, much like they do here sometimes at Effingham, send him to Savannah. So I hopped in the ambulance, and we pulled out of the parking lot, and the sirens were blaring, but I got on the phone, and I called my church, and they put him on the prayer chain. And I just will never forget the relief I felt at knowing that my puny little prayers are just going to be multiplied by hundreds of other people, that my family was not alone, that we were connected to a whole network of people faithfully praying for healing for our son. When we got down to the other hospital, they rushed him in for some more tests, so we waited again. When the doctors came out of the emergency room, they were shaking their heads, and they said, we don't really know why they sent him here. His spleen is okay. He's not going to have an operation. He's going to be sore, but he's going to heal. He doesn't need surgery. And they kept him for 4 days, and they sent him home after picking out all of the glass from his skin. And I firmly believe that that moment when those prayers went out, our son, he did begin to heal. And no one has been able to convince me otherwise, though many people did try to explain it away. And so now, whenever I am in a similar situation, I remember God's healing touch on my son, and I'm filled with hope. And a hope that comes from knowing that God does hear our prayers, that God does have the power to intervene. And it taught me to trust God. Because even though we don't always get the answer that we are looking for, we know that God is no doubt there with us, working things out for the best way possible in his master plan. Well, Thursday afternoon, I celebrated with Jason and Amber Hall. Y'all know that they had their baby with Jason. Congratulations, Grandma. Jace Allen was born. We laughed and we blessed and we thanked God for that new life. And as I left the hospital room, I got that call that is the pastor's worst nightmare. Please call the office, it's an emergency. How quickly that joy can turn to sorrow, yes? 10 minutes later, I arrived at Memorial, and they were airmetting Thomas Fuller to the trauma center after his accident at the ATV. We didn't know anything about his condition, except that he was unresponsive, and we weren't able to see him because they were running tests, and so we did the only thing that we could, but was the best thing for all of us and for Tom, and that's we prayed. And we called, and we put him on the prayer chain, and it was a comfort to know that we were connected to an entire network of faithful people. We asked God to place his healing hands on Thomas and to heal him, to give strength to the family. And as we sat there, I just closed my eyes and I remembered how God had acted in the life of my son. And I knew God had acted in the past and that God would act again. That is our faith. You know, none of us knows what tomorrow's going to bring. Nobody knows what God has in mind for Thomas or for any of us, for that matter. But that is why Jesus' words to us this morning are so meaningful. Jesus tells us to be on guard, to guard our hearts so that they're not weighed down with worries and cares of this world. He tells us to pray for the strength to face whatever life throws our way. And when things start to fall down around us, we're not to faint in fear, but to stand up and keep our heads raised, because our salvation, our God, is near. And so this morning, on this first Sunday in Advent, it's very fitting that this first candle that we light is the Advent wreath candle of hope. It's kind of awesome that it's blue too, because that's Thomas's favorite color, and we wore blue ribbons at the parade float yesterday and handed out flyers for prayers for Thomas. So we light that blue hope candle. And we know that Jesus is our hope. Jesus is the source of all healing, of all peace, of all calm, of all joy. He is the source of all life. He is the Word of God, and when God speaks, things happen. And we shall see the power of the Lord in this life. And one day we shall stand before Him and see Him in all of His glory, when the Father fulfills His promise to make all things new and right and just, when Jesus returns in the clouds in the company of angels and all of the saints. But until that day we wait. But we do not wait as those who have no hope. We wait in confidence, in trust, in safety, and in love for one another, for each other, and for the world, because we are called to be bearers of His love. Jesus' hands and feet in the world. We are living hope for all those who need to hear that Jesus is coming and our redemption is near. Thanks be to God. Amen.